I will start then, Martin. And I'd like to welcome everyone to this session of District Grants 101. I'm thrilled that we have such a large registration for the event. Our goal tonight is to provide you with a hands-on experience showing what resources are available, where to find them, and how to complete each section of the district grant. We will review the timelines for a district grant from the proposal to the grant check being sent to the club when the project is completed. Martin has gone over the house rules, so we can go ahead. There will be some glitches because I prepared to speak as if I was going into a sample grant that I created in my own club. And actually it will work because it will show up in the district grants. So let's begin. As Mary Poppins said in The Sound of Music, when you learn to read, you start with ABC. When you learn to sing, you start with Do, Re, Mi. So let's look at getting started at the very beginning of our district grants for District 6330. So we're starting at the home page as Martin has in front of you. And many of you have taken the qualification course. So you know that to find it, you go to Manage in these headers. In the drop-down menu, go to Foundation Grants. Click on that. Now that you're in the Foundation Grants page, scroll down to the left. First, you'll find the qualification course, then the qualification quiz, and scrolling down further, you find the 3 documents related to the Memorandum of Understanding. Now, all 3 components, when they're completed, mean that you are a qualified club for a district grant. And we have a lot of clubs that have qualified for that. If I scroll a little bit further down, you see the terms and conditions for foundation grants. And that's the resource that I use when I want to check, is something restricted or can we do it? And I actually had to go and check something out there today. There is below that the district grant rules and tips. And as we scroll back up, we'll find 2 more resources that I want to draw to your attention. The grant application help, and that's actually a video, which will be quite similar to the one that we're doing tonight, only it's done by club runners, so a bit more professional. Above that is the resource, How to Apply for a District Grant. And I'll refer to that later on as we go. So now you're familiar with this page. Let's go straight up to the top to the member area. And I know everybody has a login for the member area. We'll click on that and find the blue toolbar at the top. Oh, Martin has to log in. Sorry, Martin. So we've got the blue toolbar. Second over is grants. And when you click on the grants, there is submit a grant request, my club grants, and district grants. So let's look at my club grant, or submitting a grant. What does it ask us to do when we click on submit a grant?
Somebody, is everybody seeing black lines on their screen, or is that just me?
No, I'm seeing that, Martin.
Somebody is touching their screen and drawing pictures. Please don't do that. There's no way I can get rid of them. Go ahead, Myrna.
Okay. So, Martin, can you go to submit a grant? And just on the toolbar. Thank you. So this is the where you submit the grant and have the project and give it a name, but make it fairly simple but meaningful, so you can always find it and associate it with your project. In the year, of course, then you want to put the 2021 year, because that's what it is. You're either in Canada or the US to do the project. You're either in Ontario or Michigan. And then it follows through with the municipalities. Now, we've got the description area. Here we need the basic details. We don't need a volume. So what is going to be done? Where is it going to be done? How are you going to do it? As simply as you can put it. And then an estimated budget. Now, you've been working on this project, you know what you want to do, so you should have something in mind for your estimated budget. Sometimes people wonder how you get it submitted. Once you click the submit button here, then a message will go to myself and I will know that you have submitted a grant. And when I open it in the grant module, then it will send a message back to you that I'm actually reviewing it. So I want to move on then, and I will move to, on my screen, to district grants, and Martin can move there too, because then he can show you what I'm talking about, and we're talking about the same thing. The district grant page is where we have all of the grants that have been submitted all together. And before we go too much further, then there's a resource element here that I want to point out, and that is to the left of your screen is the district grant documents. So please review those documents, and if you've got questions as you go, you've got an excellent resource right there. As you scroll down, you've got the 2021 year right in front of you. That's what you're looking for. You can see, how come do you have 2021, Martin? Yeah, okay. We'll look at the grants that are under review here for 2021, and I'm going to just pull up it's not working for me. I'll pull up this Walkerton one. So this gives you the title, it gives you the whoever submitted it. Here on the right, you can see the status, and it's being submitted. It hasn't been approved yet. So this will change. It's under review. And when we get to the point of the application being completed, then it will be approved. And when we finally get it funded, then it will be funded. Another resource that's important here for you. No, I want to go back. I'm focusing on a Walkerton grant here, but I want all of you to know that when you go in and to my club, that every member of your club can use that. They can look at the grants that you have submitted for this current year, the proposals you're submitting. They can look at the grants for last year, the year before, the year before. And so it's a good tool for new members of the club to learn what the activities of your club have been in the past. So moving forward with this grant, I'll use it as my example. On each page, you see we've got the district grant timeline, and this shows up every time you change pages in the district grant. Not every time you open it, every time you change pages. So let's look at what it's really telling you. That it's telling you that between this past January and the end of this month, that's the time to submit a grant proposal for our next Rotary year. The grant proposals that you are submitting, we lump them all together and send a district proposal to the Rotary Foundation. And sometime between July the 1st and July the 31st, we usually get acceptance of that grouped together district proposal. So when we get word back that ours has been accepted, we will tell you. We will tell you that it's time to start your application. No, fill it out. Hopefully you've started some of the details. You need a complete application with your completed budget and all your supporting documents to be submitted with that application. And then the approval will be given by the district, and I will be checking all of the application details. And then when I'm happy with it, I send a note to the Foundation Grants Committee, and they review the grant application, send back a note to me that it's approved. I send a message back to you that your application is approved. Please proceed with the project. So then there's the timeline to complete the project. When you've completed the work, then work on the final report. And the supporting documents are things like, as it mentions below here, the quotations for the job you're doing, all of the estimates. In the final report, though, you also need all of the receipts for every expenditure that applies to your project. In the initial phase, we need letters that show your beneficiaries agree to the project. Are you working with a municipality and partnering with them, and they want whatever you're looking at providing for them? Are you working with another club? And then when it gets to the final report, we've got all of the invoices and the expenses that need to be included in your final report. So let's look down on this, and we've got the details. And one thing I want to point out is here where it has the contact in the grant in that initial phase. If I open up this, Jim has submitted it, but it also lists Jeff and myself as qualified members for the Walkerton Club to do the district grant. And once this past year, I had to go in and change the name from the person who had submitted the grant to someone else in the club that was qualified. And this lets you know that, and it's part of the reason that we want 2 people in your club to be qualified. And so Jim has given us an estimated budget in his grant submission. Now this is just his proposal, so he hasn't got all of the details in it. And you'll notice that the grant portion that is in the whole project is not complete in that. There's no grant portion listed. So let's just go right to the application and look at the information that, right now you can see Martin's gone to the application. Application. When you can see the list, then the grant portion is there. So I'll scroll down through the blue sheet, letters that tell you everything that you don't want to read every time you open it up. What does the application require? The application requires, just like Jim has filled out a lot of the information. He's described the project, the problem that it's going to address. This has to do with the Jubilee Hall here in Walkerton and the problems with the front step with water and snow and salt damage to it. So he's described how long it's going to take, what Jubilee Hall means to our community. Then a community assessment Well, he hasn't quite got anything, and I think from reading it, some of the information he's put in the general description can probably be copied down to this community assessment. So, how was the community determined that needed the project, and what impact will the project have on the community? Under sustainability, and using this example of Jubilee Hall, we will be expecting that the staff at Jubilee Hall, volunteer staff, will maintain the front steps that are being refurbished in this project. And the expenses for that will be maintained with them. Jubilee Hall is essentially a cooperating organization in this, and our implementation plan is, the Rotarians being involved and what is being done, and we have to identify when it's being done as well. And we'll look at the budget section and what the expectations are in the budget, and unfortunately this isn't the sample that I prepared for tonight, so I don't have any figures added to it. However, I will open it up. We're in the expense part. And let's, you've got a budget there that's got expenses in it, Martin? So the expenses need to be listed with in local dollars. So those of us in Canada use the Canadian dollar, those in Michigan use the US dollar. And if there's tax, then that needs to be included in it. And then the second last column shows the total in Canadian dollars. The last column shows the total in US dollars. And some may say, why don't we just, work in both? Well, RI works in US dollars. Our grant money is calculated in US dollars. So I need to think the bottom line in each category of income and expenses is in US dollars. And so we've got, they're calculated now, and this is in our proposed budget, so we can expect that there will be some changes when the project is completed, that things may not have been exactly as anticipated. And then if we scroll down to the income that goes with that project, you'll see that the easiest way to do that, providing that our grant module stays the same, is to take your total expenses, divide by 3. So 1/3 is the amount for the grant, and 2/3 is the expected amount that the club will put into the grant. And, so you've got your budget prepared there. So then we go back up to the top, to that line of headers that had the details for the project, the application, the budget we've looked at. Now if we click on documents, what supporting documents do you have for your project? And that's where you would have a quotation, and we've got a quote showing up in your test grant for the grant module, and in a quotation, my expectation is that it will be current dated, not a year and a half ago. Even if you're doing the project that you started thinking and planning a year and a half ago, I want current quotes for that. I want the money. How long is this quote good for? Is it good for 30 days, or do you have a quote that's good for 90 days or longer? is tax included? And one of the things with taxes, if you're working with municipalities, maybe you don't have to include the sales tax in the budget for your project because the municipality gets their sales tax back from the government. That's something to consider when you're doing that. If it's a bigger item that you're purchasing, then look at whether it is delivered to your location, whether you have to go and pick it up, is there any freight or shipping charges included? All of those details for your quote are really important to make sure that what you have on your quote and what you see on your final invoice are at least close anyway. So we've got our documents now. So let's go up to project pre-overview. And so the project overview is just that. It includes the information that you've already submitted for your project. The name of the project, the budget for it, the grant expected, and then when you fill out the project description, all of that information will be included in this project area. And it's also a printable area, which means that if you need to print off a copy to take to a committee meeting at Rotary, a board meeting at Rotary, you can have the details of everything that you're being done. It also might help if you're trying to recruit some extra volunteers to help with a project to have your details printed out right in front of you. So that's the project overview. Next along our header of titles is the individual project report. And this is what I look at. This is your final report on a project. So we have the project description, and it's at this point in the project description that you talk about what you actually did do. What did you do? When did you do it? Where did you do it? Those are the important details about what your project was. We want to know how many people will benefit from your project. So if you did something in the summertime that's going to be there all year round, you can include this many children, this many adults, say if it's a playground area you're working on. If it's shade trees, it may be players, parents, and seniors that are benefiting from it. Just target about how many people will be benefiting from that. Then the next question is, who are those beneficiaries and how will it be impacted? And if you follow that line, it says what humanitarian need was met. And for some that might be, a safety need, it may be a health need, basic human needs if you're working with a food bank. It may be environmental with trees. So address that as you can. How many Rotarians participated in the project? Well, I guess you could say how many fingers and toes do you have? So you start off with the Rotarian that thought up the project. Where did the concept for this project start? And who else did they engage in developing the project? How many people were involved in obtaining quotations? How many, maybe there were different people that had contacts with the municipality that you engaged to go to the municipality to ask for their support and a letter of support for your grant, to ask also then whether they'd be involved in maintaining the project for you. Somebody has to water those trees once you get them planted, So all those project people, even when it comes to you're the one that bought the equipment, but you sent your friend Betty to Staples to pick it up, or, you know, all of those people are people involved in the project. And then what did they do? Give 2 examples, not including financial support provided to the project. So I don't like you to put down, somebody wrote a check. No, check writing doesn't count. It's good money, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't count here. But things that do count, as I said, people that developed the project, went and got quotes, etc. But also we cannot forget the army of people that it took at the bingo to sell lottery tickets, to work at whatever your club's fundraising event happened to be. Ours last year was the garage tour. Those people worked and they contributed to the project, because without that work, you couldn't have done the project because you wouldn't have had the money. I know there's some controversy on that, but everybody helps. And then if there was a cooperating organization, then you need to explain what their role actually was in accomplishing the project. And then you hit the update button and you think, wow, I'm done. I've got my final report done. But no, 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 no. You scroll down just a little bit further and there you have your financial report. Now, the best way to do it is scroll right to the bottom, because this time I want you to start with the expense section first. What were the expenses that you had for the project? And you submit them again with the description and who supplied it. So that information needs to match with an invoice that you've already scanned and put in the documents area. Keep it in local currency, because that's what your receipts are going to be, depending on which side of the border you're on, but it's local for local. Put in the tax, the amount, the total will be there, and then the conversion for US. Total that up, and that is your total expenses for the project. Again, then you're going to divide by 3 so you know what your grant portion is going to be. And now it's time to scroll back up to that income section. So the income is, if we have enough money, will be, 50 cents on the dollar. So 1/3 will be the grant and 2/3 will be what the club put in. Now, one of the things I like to have someplace in the report, and it can be put in with the club money there, the exchange rate, because I don't want to have to go guessing as to when you did the project and stuff. You tell me right up front that you looked up the exchange rate, and then I don't have to recalculate the Canadian dollars to the US for any of those projects. Now, one of the things I'll say, if you do something and you've purchased the items, well, I just finished a grant, funding a grant this past weekend, where some of the purchases were made back in February, and some of the purchases were made in March. So we were dealing with 2 different exchange rates there. So the invoices for March, I calculated at the March RI rate, and the invoices for April at the April rate, and added them up. So whether that's a benefit or just a pain in the neck for me, I'm not sure, but that's what we did. And so we've got our grant there at 1/3, and the club funds are at 2/3 of the expenses that we have in that sample grant. Now, as you scroll back up to past all of the details in your report, oh, one more thing I want to mention for receipts. If someone has done a lot of purchases, and I'll use the example from one of the projects where they purchased a number of grocery gift cards from some different stores, and they had a Tim's gift card, and I think they had some clothing items. If one person purchases those, they can do like a Word document and list all the purchases on one document and show that that's their total. There'll be a club check to them to pay those expenses, but it saves the searching around with the receipts to find out who paid which receipt, and makes it a lot easier to track. And paper trails are paper trails on grants as well as everything else. And just so you know, when this is all said and done, there is a district audit of our grants. When all the grants are completed at the end of the year, then there's a district audit. So I have the final word with the grant, and I just hope that we've paid out the right money, or I've told Martin to pay you out the right amount of money. We go back up to that list of headers where we had the report, and the very last item is the activity log. And in the activity log, it will show who has accessed this grant and what they did with it. So the grant that you're looking at shows that it was submitted. Hit the submit button. And then when it was opened in the grant module to look at, and it's under review, the status changes and it automatically records in this activity log what has happened. And it will automatically report when it's approved and again when it's actually funded. Now, when it is funded, or in each stage, it opens up a little box that I can add final comments to. And that's where, even though the grant funding is in that financial report that you've put, I also repeat it in the log activity area, so that if Martin wants to check how much a check, that make sure that it's the cross-referenced properly, he doesn't have to go all through the grant report. He can just go to the activity log and he knows that the actual number will be sitting right there. And that's the overview on our grants. Now, before I ask Martin to join back in for the questions that have been posted, I want to pause for a commercial for the Rotary Foundation, and specifically the annual fund. The funds that will be available to be dispersed for district grants in 2021 are primarily the member donations to the annual fund 3 years ago. That's during Martin's tenure as the district governor. District grants in 3 years hence will be the base for, based on the donations of our clubs right now, 1920. So has your club met or exceeded your goal of donating to the annual fund? And will our legacy for this year provide sufficient funds for the district grants in 3 years?